We're introducing today with Cigna and Embarc, we're introducing an approach to control these expenses. I'm joined by Terry Stearns today. Terry's located in Hartford, Connecticut. He's a Cigna Payer Solutions Training Manager, but today he's the Embarc subject matter expert. In addition to Terry, we've got Ann McCollum and Patsy Bennett on, and they've joined us from Cigna to help answer any of the questions you might have about this program. We're holding this webinar in a presentation mode, so everyone's muted. Please submit any questions you have through the chat and let us know if your questions are a little too involved and to type them out, and we'll unmute you at the end of the presentation so you can ask your question in detail. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Terry.
Okay, perfect. Thanks very much, Jeff. And again, I'll reiterate Jeff's thanks. We appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about Embarc benefit protection here today. Recently available through Cigna Payer Solutions, and we think it's going to have a pretty significant impact out there in the healthcare space, managing different charges and costs that are associated with gene therapy. So in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, we'll discuss, if you go to the next slide, Diane. We'll keep the presentation probably to about 15, the formal presentation to about 15 or 20 minutes. And during that time, I'm going to talk a little bit about gene therapy trends that we're seeing out in the marketplace. We'll talk about how Embarc benefit protection seeks to find a solution to the two most important considerations that come to the gene therapy mix. One is providing access, easy access to these therapeutic approaches. And the other kind of consideration is, as much as possible, trying to manage the cost of these therapies. So we'll address that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the particulars of how the network solution works. So there are different things that you're going to want to know about with regard to this program. So we'll cover all that stuff too. And as Jeff mentioned, you can send your questions in through the chat feature. We'll reserve time at the end for Q&A, and that's when my friend Ann McCollum from the product team will probably be chiming in to help support the cause a little bit more. So with all that said, let's just jump in and talk a little bit about what we are seeing with regard to the marketplace. So this slide, and every time I come to it, I sort of marvel at just the miraculous times that we live in. There are so many different ailments and conditions that 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, were so completely out of reach to us with regard to therapeutic approaches. And now there are solutions on the horizon, and a lot of that is driven by different evolutions that we're seeing take place with regard to gene therapy. This is great news because if you draw your attention to the upper left of the slide, 10% of us have some sort of condition that's related to a genetic defect. And while we're only talking about two specific therapeutic approaches here today, there are 18 different therapies that are on the horizon that are going to be seeking FDA approval in just the next 3 years. So clearly it is a market that is growing and getting bigger. For all the wonderful things that these therapeutic approaches provide, the sort of downside is that they're very, very expensive. So we project that most of these therapies that are coming into the market have or are going to have multi-million-dollar prices. What that translates into is what you see there at the bottom of the page. So by 2026, which is essentially right around the corner, we expect that spending on gene therapy is going to be in the ballpark of $14 billion. So clearly a big piece of the market. So as we talk about Embarc benefit protection here today, what I would encourage you to do is think about sort of the long-term implications of Embarc benefit protection. So as more therapies come into the mix, they will be brought into the Embarc benefit protection umbrella. One caveat that I will throw out there is we are seeing that 18 therapies are going to be seeking approval. That's not to say that all 18 will fall underneath the Embarc benefit protection umbrella. So I think, particularly with some recent news, there's not always like a universal agreement with what the FDA approves. So as the FDA approves things, we'll do our own analysis to assess whether or not the impact is such that we want to bring it into the program. The other thing that I would also mention as well, when we talk about this program, we are specifically talking about gene therapy. So there are other cell therapies that are out there that are designed to address different blood disorders and cancers. So those are handled through CAR T cell therapies, which generally, and at least with Cigna, fall under transplant services. So what we're talking about today is gene therapy, and specifically two FDA-approved approaches that are currently out in the market, and they are the only approaches that are out there at the market at this point in time. Those two different approaches we'll talk about on this next slide here. So Embarc Benefit Protection out of the gates is going to provide access to Luxturna, which treats inherited retinal dystrophy. So that is a progressive form of blindness. And then it's also going to cover Zolgensma, which treats spinal muscular atrophy in children. You can see the price, the costs of those medications there. $850,000 for Luxturna, and then over $2 million for Zolgensma. So clearly big ticket items. What Embarc Benefit Protection does is it allows clients to pay that predictable $1.83 per employee per month charge. And what happens is if a member of the group is diagnosed with something that would require Luxturna or Zolgensma, then those drugs will be provided on a prepaid basis. So less of a claim impact to the group. There's nothing that they're going to need to pay up front. The other thing that I will also point your attention to in sort of the parentheses there in the finer print, the charge through Payer Solutions is $1.83 per employee per month. So I know a lot of you on the phone are potentially working with business that comes in from different areas of Cigna. So you might see it elsewhere on a per member per month basis, which I believe is in the ballpark of 99 cents. So if you see that and then you reflect on the $1.83 and say, why is the cost so much higher here? It's only because we've configured it to a per employee per month basis so that it syncs up with the way that we bill clients through Payer Solutions and through PBA. So just recognize they're equivalent. So there's no member out-of-pocket cost for the drug itself. The small caveat, if you see the fine print, is for members who have HSAs, you're probably aware that there are deductible needs that need to be met. So that would apply in those instances too, here with this. But outside of that, the drug is, again, prepaid. Where there is potentially cost share, if you look at the fourth bullet point here, is on the costs that are associated with administering the drug. So that stuff, as it is today, is handled on a fee-for-service basis. So those charges would still apply. Going down to the second to the last point, if you happen to have Cigna case management, then we do have a gene therapy case management team that will help to shepherd the person and the family through the service and the treatment. So that's out there. And then the final point here on the page is an important one. So this benefit solution requires that everything be undertaken in network. So we have a specific list of facilities and providers that allow for the administration of these drugs. So if you're talking about a $2 million shot, we want to make sure that whoever's administering it knows exactly what they're doing. So we have thoroughly vetted in-network providers for our gene therapy team. So that's out there on our Cigna website. So has to stay in-network. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about some of the specifics. If we go to the next page, we'll talk a little bit about sort of the financial impact. So this is a kind of visual that our marketing team pulled together for us. And if you look at the top of the slide there, they're assuming a 1,000 employee plan at that $1.83 employee per month charge times the 12 months. So we're looking at about a $22,000 charge over the course of the year. Now, if you turn your attention to the lower left there, they've visually depicted what the hits will look like if you have 1, 2, or 3 claims of Zolgensma or Luxturna. So looking at that $22,000 on the page here, that stands out. But if you have a group of 1,000 employees, over time, the chance of having one of these high ticket claims come into play obviously increases. So you want to guard certainly against those numbers that you see there in the lower left. The other important consideration you can see toward the right in that blue box there. So if the group has Embarc benefit protection and Cigna stop loss, then we will provide a decrement on the Cigna stop loss rate to account for the change in risk that comes with having this protection. So there's not one flat decrement that is provided to groups. It's going to vary based on pooling points and also other characteristics of the group. So it'll differ based on group, but it is out there and it will help to kind of take down that stop loss rate. Let's talk a little bit about the availability of the program. So it was made available first elsewhere in the enterprise here at Cigna. So we now have a product that's been kind of tested a little bit in the marketplace. We made it available through Cigna Payer Solutions and through PBA a little bit earlier this year. And it is now currently available for new business. It's available at renewal, and it also can be added actually off renewal. So it's basically out there whenever you need it. We will talk about one specific consideration that you'll need to think about if it is added off renewal, but we'll cover that in another slide. But bottom line is you can basically tack it onto a group at any point along the way. We talked about the $1.83 charge. If you go to the fourth bullet and look at that, so it's currently available only for groups that have our Cigna Medical Network access. When we introduced the product, there really was a pretty significant groundswell of interest. So we're currently exploring the ability to offer this on a more widespread basis to groups that do not have Cigna network access. So just keep it in mind that we're looking to continue to grow the availability of this product. This slide talks a little bit about how the whole process works, and I've kind of boiled it down into pretty simple terms here. Starting off at the left, of course, it begins with the discussion with a specialist sitting down with a family, talking through what's going on. And if the physician determines that Luxturna or Zolgensma makes sense for the member, then the physician will request a medical necessity review through Cigna. So it comes to Cigna. We've got a gene therapy team that is going to be looking at all the requirements, and they will then basically approve it or not. If it gets approved, it then moves to that middle circle there that you see in the slide. So it'll go to Evacor. I think most of you are probably familiar with the fact that Evacor is now a subsidiary of Cigna. And basically, from this point on, Evacor is going to be quarterbacking the whole Embarc benefit protection process. The first thing that they're going to do is they're going to do another review of the request just to make sure that the network solution requirements are met. So among the things that they're going to be looking at is when did the group start their Embarc benefit protection? They'll also look at, is it an in-network provider that has been requested? Because that is going to be, as we said earlier, one of the things that one of the stipulations that needs to be met for the care to take place. So Evacor does that review. And then if there's any sort of blips in the road that doesn't send it forward, they'll go back to the Cigna gene therapy team to see if it can be ironed out. If all systems are go, then it goes to that next step where you see pharmacies and sites of care. So Evacor is going to then work with Accredo, which is our specialty medication provider, to provide the drug to the in-network facility that's actually going to administer it. You can see in the words there, through Accredo or by other arrangements. So one thing that Evacor will do is in connecting with the facility that is going to provide the medication, If they have their own vendor that supports specialty pharmacy, they'll look to see if we can get a better price through their vendor. So if there's a better price out there through that vendor, then we'll lead with that instead of Accredo. So the goal really is to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to manage the cost. And then at the very right, so again, no out of cost for the drug itself to the member, the care is provided. And then the thing that they're on the hook for is what you see at the bottom. Any drug administration is handled on a fee-for-service basis. So that's kind of what the process looks like. The other thing that Evacor is doing behind the scenes is a financial review. And basically what they're doing on an annual basis is looking at the overall program level, the fees that came in, and also the outlay across the board to make sure that the program is financially stable. The other thing that they're doing is they're making sure that we're not generating all kinds of surpluses in fees if no claims are being paid out. In the event that there is a surplus, then there will potentially be refunds extended at the client level. So there is this background kind of pseudo settlement taking place on an annual basis, just to make sure that, again, financial stability of the program is being met and that we're not like making this some sort of cash cow. The bottom point of this slide that I want to sort of kind of highlight too, and it's because it's different from what we do with our other products. We do, through contract language, reserve the right to change the rate with 30 days notice. Because, as we mentioned earlier, new therapeutic approaches will be coming onto the market fairly regularly over the next few years. We need to make sure that we're able to assess the risk on an ongoing basis. I'll also add at this point too, in an earlier conversation that we had with Jeff and Diane and their team, there were questions about whether or not you could pick and choose with Embarc what therapeutic approaches you would have covered under the Embarc umbrella. So the answer is you can't pick and choose. Basically, whatever comes into the mix under Embarc is universally applied across groups because it's sort of hard to kind of keep a handle on the risk. So we'll be establishing a single rate for all the groups that enjoy this protection. So just wanted to point that out as well. There's some other things that we're doing with regards specifically to Zolgensma that I think are important to point out. So Zolgensma, again, is the medication that supports muscular atrophy, the treatment of muscular atrophy. There is a window that's in place where if that window is met, then the medication is going to have the impact that we want it to have. So the member must be younger than 2 years of age in order to receive the medication. The other stipulation that we have is the group must have Embarc benefit protection before the birth of the member. So this again is purely to protect against anti-selection. And this goes back to that earlier point that I made. If a group is looking to add Embarc benefit protection to their benefit program mid-cycle, so off renewal, they just need to understand that this is one of the things that we're looking at. They must have Embarc benefit protection, again, before the birth of the member. And then the bottom of the slide here. So we do, because this is the one that was over $2 million cost associated with the drug. We do have period of review 5 years to ensure that the treatment actually was successful. If it falls short, then we will get reimbursements from the manufacturer that we then account for in that settlement that we just talked about. So a couple of things, again, specific to Zolgensma that we wanted to make you aware of. And now on this last slide, this basically recaps some of the points that we made earlier. And it also does a good job of, I think, kind of making a distinction between stop loss and Embarc benefit protection. Because when you look at them, For a lot of us, it feels like they're kind of one and the same, but they're really not. So Embarc Benefit Protection, again, network solution that provides the drugs on a prepaid basis. So it minimizes that claim impact for the group. The members, as we said earlier, they incur no charges for the drugs. And then we do that additional follow-up for Zolgensma to make sure that it worked. Where Embarc Benefit Protection kind of does intersect with stop loss is those rates that we talked about. So we do provide a decrement if you've got Cigna stop loss and Embarc. And if you do have a vendor of choice that is associated with the group, maybe go back to them, see if their underwriting team can extend some sort of relief on their rates for this product. So that's kind of the high level view of Embarc Benefit Protection. Before we go and start to triage the questions that have come in, I do want to pause and ask Ann McCollum, our Cigna product lead, if there was anything else that she wanted to mention, maybe potentially correct me on, and anything that you wanted to add.
Hi, Terry. No, great job. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to addressing the questions.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, Terry, I'm really glad you were able to cover some of the questions that we had brought to the table. And I know because we're claims people and we dig in, we really got into a lot of these conversations, and especially with the adverse selection and just sort of what does that ultimately look like? Because someone's making a conscious choice to invest money into this on the bet that, you know, it's going to protect them. So it is insurance. It's not stop loss. And it is particularly against that claim. And one of the things I just wanted to re-highlight too is that I'm really glad that you guys have considered putting in that reconciliation and accounting to give back the client's money if the fund gets too big, if you're not having the claims that you anticipated based on your underwriting. So with that in mind, I've got a few questions. The first one is, this is one of our clients, and they're rolling out the services for the 2 drugs. And she's asking, do you offer options for overall gene therapy care? So I think she's really trying to say here is this just going to include everything as it keeps getting rolled out?
So Jeff, I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow. Are you saying or asking about adding other gene therapies as they become available?
Yeah, and I believe that she's asking if just gene therapy in general would be covered under this. Yes, she's saying yes, you're correct with your question.
Okay, so yes, as these come under FDA approval, we will evaluate them. There's no guarantee that we're going to be adding each and every one that's approved. Our clinical teams dig in. We've got a lot of experts on gene therapy, and they will take a look and understand if this is something that's going to be of value to add to the program. So that's my short answer on that question. You're welcome.
So kind of an addendum to that question that we asked when we were on the first round of this is, as more drugs get considered, how stable are we with that $1.83? And, you know, back to the point about underwriting and reconsidering, they'll be going back to the table, and there is a likelihood that that number will increase as more risk and more drugs are added to the program. So again, this is where the program is today. So the on the Zolgensma, you mentioned 1 treatment dose. Does Luxturna require multiple treatments? Was the question.
Yes. So the answer is it's considered a one-time treatment per eye. That said, the treatment is done separately in each eye on separate days, with usually at least 6 days between the 2 surgical procedures. The cost that you saw was for both eyes, and typically a claim is submitted per dose for each patient. So we would expect 2 claims, which would then total right around the $850,000 that you saw on this slide that Terry showed. There is always a chance that a patient has only one eye or viable retinal cells in one eye and not the other, but our clinical team is telling me that that's usually quite unlikely. Does that answer your question, Adam?
All right.
All right.
Perfect.
Perfect. I don't need to read you the questions. You can read them yourself.
Yeah.
So coming from Ben, do stop loss carriers other than, Cigna stop loss take this into account? Will it change in risk? And if I could add to Ben's question, because I kind of queued this up, is do you have any prepared material that we could be presenting to other stop loss carriers so they can look at how to potentially discount their rates?
I don't have anything prepared that I have seen, Jeff, but I can certainly reach out to our stop loss area, the underwriting area, and see if there's anything that they have made available. Our understanding is that, yes, we believe that other carriers are taking this into account, but we don't know if they're doing it to the same extent that Cigna is at this time. Don't have a lot, these are pretty new programs, and so we don't have a lot of market intel on what some of the other carriers are doing. But I will take that back and I will look to see if there's anything else we could share.
Great. And it would be, I think, a good idea, and Ben, I'm glad you bring this up, is, if you do elect this program, to just kind of remind the carriers at renewal or when you're getting quotes that we do have this program in place so that they can consider it with their rates as well. All right. We don't have, okay. One more from Ben is, what is the average utilization for Zolgensma and Luxturna? I noticed 10% of the individuals have gene therapy use case, but what about these two in particular?
Yeah, so this is where it gets kind of tricky. There's not a we did our investigation as we built the program. So according to the Cleveland Clinic, they're telling us that spinal muscular atrophy type 1 occurs in about 1 in 6,000 babies worldwide. We don't have specific US data. And just know that spinal muscular atrophy has from, I think it's type 0 to type 5. Type 0 is typically, there's not much that you can do. It's really tragic and the babies don't survive. Type 1, if we get these therapies into them before age 2, there usually can, it doesn't completely take away any of the symptoms, but it greatly alleviates it and it slows the progression. In some cases, it has stopped the progression. The other types are much milder and they tend to happen later in life. And as far as the rare form of inherited retinal dystrophy that Luxturna treats, it is difficult to put a number on, but the estimate that our clinical team puts on the incidence is 1 in 50,000 people.
That's helpful to kind of weigh that risk and that odd too.
Yeah.
I've got a question. So let's say someone is on their own treatment path and maybe they weren't going to a network provider. How does that get addressed? How do we go about either getting that person into a network, or would Embarc work with that non-network provider if the treatment had already started there?
That's a great question. So we looked at this very carefully because it is an in-network and we will only provide, Embarc criteria will only be met and the drug costs covered if they go to an in-network participating provider. If we see a pre-auth or pre-cert come through and the provider is not in network, we have a process in place where we will reach out to PBA and alert them of the fact, and then you all can work with the group to see if there is an opportunity to steer to in-network. And we will do that whether Embarc is in play or not, but it's particularly important if Embarc is in play, because if it's not an in-network provider, there will not be that coverage. Embarc criteria will not be met and the drug cost will not be covered by the program.
Oh, so that's a really critical piece here, is that we do need to get that patient moved to make sure that we have that coverage. All right. Well, this has been a great presentation. I'll give people just a second more if there's any other questions out there. You know, as the slide says, thank you very much for your time. But, you know, today we learned a little bit about the Embarc program, where Cigna is, and honestly where it's going, because this is just the start. We know that there's going to be more and more of these drugs released. So by keeping this in our you know, point of view, we can continue to move down the road and look at the risk and come up with solutions. So, you know, actually one more question, Anne, is there any consideration if someone doesn't have Cigna, you know, to make this a standalone available product?
As Terry mentioned, we are looking to extend this to our non-Cigna medical access groups. We're just not there yet. There is some IT that we need to do to bring our systems up to speed for handling this type of business. Right now, we're just not set up for that. And I'm sorry, but I do not have a target. We are in hot and heavy conversations around this because we know it's a request, it's an ask that we have. We're just not ready right now.
In reality, it's a risk that we're all facing, you know.
Yes,
So
yes.
looking at different you know, people or companies that are willing to take that risk from us is really valuable too. All right, just a highlight for everybody. We have recorded today's presentation and we will be making it available to you. So if you want to just follow up with either your sales rep or your service rep, be glad to get you the link for the videos. And we thank you again for taking time out of your very busy days to join us and learn more about this program.